And we are live with a book and a beverage with one of our favorite people, Herman P. Hunter. And yes, if he comes on our show, he's one of our favorite people.
That's right.
Herman, how are you?
Oh,
You don't
oh,
discriminate.
I was about to say. So that's what makes me your favorite person. So I've had a lot of people say that I was not their favorite person. So I'm doing well.
You know, Tim McKay hasn't shown up yet, so I can say you're my favorite Canadian, even though you're not a Canadian,
But
at least.
I could always talk like Canadian, eh?
You're pretty close to Canada
Yeah.
though, so you
Oh, I like to go play hockey in the ice. It's a big project for me.
I don't know what you're talking
there he
about.
is.
Yeah.
I'm here, that's that.
Still my favorite Canadian, Tim, unless another one shows up. Um, so, Herman, you have three books, and I'm not reading off the side of my screen here when I say they're The Revenant and the Tomb, The Revenant and the Cult, and The Wizard's Stone.
Yep.
What are they about?
A revenant. No. Actually, the Revenant and the Tomb. The Revenant and the Tomb is about. Right, let's back up a little bit here. Technically, what I write is Christian fiction, although I kind of call it Christian-esque fiction because it's not really Christian fiction, and it's fantasy. It's epic high fantasy, kind of gritty, kind of dark, but very clean. There's very little swearing. There's absolutely no sex, and it's pretty much all adventure and intrigue and all that other that fantasy sort of goodness without the romantasy elements of it. So the Revenant in the Tomb is actually about a warrior that has been killed in battle. Well, the main character is a warrior that's been killed in battle. He's been resurrected, and a lot of this is all backstory. He's been resurrected, and he is now kind of like an avenging. He's sort of like an avenging sword for in this world God. Like the God's name is the Allfather, which is kind of a play on the Viking term, even though I use it to represent sort of a Christian God, very monotheistic. And so the both books star that character, and he has with him companions that help him along the way. One of them is an Alani huntress, which would be my elves, called Herodine. And in the Revenant and the Tomb, there's a Wodaman, which is my dwarves, called Tulvgir. And they go to this tomb to see if the tomb is still undisturbed, and it's in this remote location. And they get there, and they find out that things aren't things. It's definitely not undisturbed. So that and then the Wizard's Stone is a separate story about a young wizard's apprentice named Odo, who is sent by the wizard of this place called the Crooked Tower on a mission to deliver an artifact to a king halfway across the world. And to that effect, he hires these mercenaries, and these mercenaries are paid a lot of money to protect him. And of course, pretty much from the minute they leave, they're being tracked and stalked, and people die. So that's that story. And then the third book is The Revenant and the Cult, and this came out May 21st. And it is basically the same character as the first one. His name is Hel Cedric, who is now, and it's actually the follow-up of the Revenant and the Tomb, who is now tracking down this cult that is somewhat related to the events of the Revenant and the Tomb. So, and it's actually a duology. There's two books to it. The first one, of course, has been released. The next one I'm working on now, and hopefully I'll release it before the end of the year. But I think what I'm probably going to do is a Kickstarter on that, and then release the book sometime, and then release the book to Amazon and whatnot sometime in March. I wrote both books together, the first and second book of the Revenant and the Cult, as a cohesive book. But as I started reading it, I'm like, this is like two separate books, so I split it up.
Does the second book in the series have a title yet?
Yeah, it's called The Terror of the Witchwood. Or no, The Terror in the Witchwood.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Who
the
does
first,
the covers? There's a little conversation going on the side here.
do you like the covers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The first cover was actually done by a service called Book Launch. I think it's called booklaunch.com. And in order to preserve that sort of style, I went to an artist that I know, Jason Robinson, who is who does book covers, but he also does comic books. He's also what's the word I'm looking for? He's also a illustrator, a business illustrator. He does, things for, like, he was doing one campaign um, for a insurance company. So he was doing illustrations for an insurance company and a bunch of other things. So Jason took my original concept and I gave him a couple ideas, and he created the cover. So
Nice.
he's a very good artist.
Yeah. So Emily here said a bunch of things in acronym speak. Can you tell us what those acronyms mean?
Okay, IAK is Iron Age Knights, and AWDC is A Drink with Crazy, which I was telling you about in the back. We're in a loose association called the Iron Age, and it was. Do you know who Razor Fist is? Okay,
No.
Razor Fist is a big YouTube personality. If you don't like swearing and very long, well-worded insults, he's probably not your kind of guy, but he does a lot of commentary, social commentary one, and he's also an author. But he coined the term, what the culture needs is a new Iron Age of, the media and the media, like comics, books, music, movies, because I mean, what we're getting nowadays really isn't that good. And so that a lot of people sort of gravitated towards that, and a lot of little groups popped up, and they all putting themselves under the name of the Iron Age banner. And one of them is it has around its central figure known as A Drink with Crazy, who's a younger guy who puts on a live stream, and him and two other people. One of them is one of them's name's King Richard, but King Richard has a sort of like a sci-fi fantasy magazine called Anvil, which is very much attached to this Iron Age movement, and he highlights different authors, and there's short stories, and there's art, and all that other stuff in there, and it's becoming very successful. So Everly is from that, and Everly actually does a lot of music in that group as well. So, and I believe he also has an album out too. So there's a big sort of like a pulp revival, old school revival going on, and a lot of it's younger guys.
Yeah.
I'm the old fart of the group. I'm like, pushing 60 at this point. So, and boy, do I take
You're our people, man.
Yeah.
The Gen X council has spoken.
Yeah.
I would do that, but I'd probably bruise a rib. So
yeah. Oh, my angina. Anyways.
It's not only sad that we say that, but sad that we know what it is.
Yep. And to you who don't, it'll come sooner or later to you.
Oh yes. You ain't gonna live young forever.
So basically, this whole thing is just kind of getting away from the prepackaged nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you guys are, where you guys fall in, like, series like The Rings of Power and the Wheel of Time Amazon adaptation, but suffice to say, I've found them a little underwhelming, and that's putting it lightly. And actually, I started this journey like nearly 20 years ago, because like I was telling you guys earlier, I was a software developer, and I used to go and travel on planes. And I wasn't much of a reader, but when you're stuck on a plane, for like 2-3 hours, you get nothing else to do. There's no movies, so you buy a book and you start reading it. So I started getting into First I read Lord of the Rings, which I had done earlier, but I was a kid and I really didn't understand it. And Silmarillion. Then I decided, well, let's try Conan. So I started reading a bunch of those Conan short stories. I got a couple of compilations, and I just burned through those. And then I moved on to H.P. Lovecraft, and of course, Jules Verne and all that other stuff. And I really started getting into reading. And so when I had burned through all of the stuff that that I really liked, I started trying the newer stuff, and I was not entertained. And I would get to like chapter 5, and I'm like, why am I reading this? And then just put it down and never read it again. I went through so many paperbacks. They just didn't have what I wanted. And at some point, I was like, well, maybe I should go write my own. If this is what I really want, maybe I should go write my own. So then I decided I wrote one story, and it was so bad I burned it. I then wrote another story about a character named Frankie, and I decided that was really good. It wasn't, but it was really good. So I was going to put it out on, I was going to try and get it published. And it was kind of funny because, I had my wife read it, and she goes, yeah, it's okay. And I took that it was fabulous and decided it was been published. 80 rejections later. Needless to say, I was kind of, and I did have one person tell me, there's a story here, but the way you've written it, you have to you have to rewrite it, And I was like looking at this thing, it's like hundreds, like 100 and some thousand words, and it was only the first book in a series, which that was the other stupid thing, is just trying to get into traditional publishing with your series. And so I was like, this isn't worth it. And I gave up. Now, the thing is I am published. I was published before this, but I had written some stuff in software. So I kind of knew the game, and so I knew what publishing was, and I had been professionally published. But fiction is a different animal than software articles and books and software. So, but anyways, I decided that I'm not going to do this. I have other things I can do in life, and I had kids at that time, so I just kind of gave up on it for about 15 years. And then somewhere like around 2017, 2018, I got back into the bug again, because I'd written this short story that kind of concluded that series. I don't even know why I wrote it. And that story never left me. The original story I wrote, and that short story never left me. So I figured, just for fun, I'm going to go and I'm going to rewrite this short story and give it the kind of the treatment it deserves. Month and a half later, and about 173,000 words, I had this huge book, and it was awful, and I knew it was awful, but I figured, well, how about I go back and I rewrite the first book again, learning what I learned. So I did. I spent at least half a year rewriting that first book. I actually split it up. I was thinking about publishing it, seriously considering publishing it. I split it up, and so I rewrote the whole book. I gave it to my wife. This is the one that she thought was just it was kind of cringy. And when she got done reading it, she's like, I've bought books as good as this. So this is as good as anything I've ever. That's actually her actual words were, "This is as good as anything I've ever bought." And she reads Dean Koontz, Stephen King, you name it, she reads them. She's very much action adventure. Very, she's not a big fantasy buff, but she has read fantasy, but she's a big action adventure person. Mm-hmm. And she goes, "You could easily publish this." And I'm like, I don't think so. She goes, "No, you should try publishing this." So, but in the interim, I started researching publishing, and I kind of saw the environment of the publishing environment this day and age, and I was very skeptical. But the problem is that if you don't try it, everybody says, well, you won't know until you try. So I tried it. And 2.5 years later, I was self-publishing. So I've racked up probably I estimate between the first time and the second time, I've racked up probably about 150 rejections.
Wow.
Yeah.
I quit after 3.
Yeah. No, I'm stupid. So
So what were you doing during that 2 years of being rejected constantly?
well, the first 2 year or the first year, actually probably for the first 6 months, I was I was focused on the book, focused on the book, focused on the book. Then about 6 months in, I'm like, maybe I should think about self-publishing. And then a year later, I was like, maybe I don't want to publish this book. And at some point or another, I was like, okay, so we're self-publishing. And actually at one point I was just going to give up. This is the second time around. I'm like, this is not worth it. There's no way I'm going to get published. I didn't want to spend the money it would take to be self-published. I didn't want to spend the money and take the time it would take to self-publish.
Yeah, because the other thing was working so fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to pay if I get traditionally published. I don't have to pay for my covers. I don't have to pay for the audiobook narrator. I don't have to pay for all that. It's a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
And even with self-publishing, it's going to take me years before I get some sort of recognition, if I get any at all. Whereas I could short circuit that for maybe 2 years and figure out I'm not going to get any recognition at all traditionally published. So, but anyways, so my wife basically said, "Don't give this up. We'll figure out we'll figure out how to pay for it, and you have something, and you need to pursue this." And so she pulled me back from the brink for the second time. And then at that point, I started trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I had been watching a bunch of marketing videos on, self-publishing marketing videos, which that was a stupid idea too. And then I decided, well, let's build my email list. I'm going to write something that's going to attract people and attract people to my website or to my writing, and they'll give me their email list, their email address, and I'll build an email list. And so I started thinking about, well, what am I going to do? So I decided, well, I'll just write this one little fun novella, which eventually became The Revenant and the Tomb, and I'll give that away. And so I was working on what at that time was the Wizard Stone, and I stopped working on the Wizard Stone, and I focused on this novella, and got the novella done. I was working on the novella, got it done. We started, we got the cover, we got all that other stuff, and so I got it all ready, and I go to release it, and for about 2 or 3 months, I got out of 2 or 3 months effort, I got probably 20 email addresses. They were all people who knew me beforehand. And I was like, well, maybe we should publish it. And so I did. And I sold, my first year, I sold about 200 books. At some point, we created an audio book, The Revenant and the Tomb, and I found my narrator, Steve Fortune. And that sold it probably about as good as any of the ebooks. So then I released The Wizard Stone next year, or the year after. This is 2023. And I basically I sold as many books in 2 months as I did the entire year of The Revenant and the Tomb. And then in 6 months, I had doubled that. So I'm like, maybe I've got something here. And in this time, I'm having people on social media come up to me and say, so when's the next Hal Cedric book coming out? And they're telling me they want all these different things. And I'm like, really? That book was just a giveaway. Okay, I didn't. That guy was one and done. It was just supposed to be a fun adventure with this guy runs around with this flaming sword, killing bad guys, and he was just one and done. I had all these other plans, and my wife's going, you got a bunch of people asking you for another Hal Cedric book. You better write them another Hal Cedric book. So I was like, yeah, you're right. So that's The Revenant and the Tomb, or the Revenant and the Cult.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You wrote a story about a guy in fantasy with a flaming sword running around smiting things, and you didn't think that was going to be wildly popular?
I mean, my first book was about the Frankie book was about a community college dropout. It was the promised one, which, that didn't sell. I don't know if somebody running around with a flaming sword. Look at, man, I don't know. I just sell the books. I don't get people to read them.
So do you have any grand kind of story things that you're mulling through now that you're looking at in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, all three books and eventually the fourth book, they're all in the same sort of literary universe. So it's the world itself is, or they live in a world that's not our world, and it is what I call the East. It's called East of Heaven. There's a great Western Sea, and there's a big bank of fog, and on the other side of that is heaven, but nobody can ever get past the fog except the Alani. And the world itself is kind of like going through this sort of spiritual warfare, except it's not, it's not like here where we don't see the devils. The devils really exist, and they kill a lot of people. So, and there's four of them, and I go into an explanation of this in the book. There's four major evils that arise. The first one occurred with the Great War, and he was brought down, and he was actually thrown into the void. And then the Frankie book that I wrote revolved around the second one, and then there's two others after that. And this book kind of introduces you, My Revenant and the Cult sort of introduces you to that that grand story. And the Wizard Odo is actually takes place around the beginning of that second great evil, and he runs into sort of the followers of that great evil. But it's very early on in that period of time. So yeah, I got a whole literary universe in my head that never really left me after the first book, and it kind of changes and gets refined as I write. But there's a much bigger story here, and I figured I'm not going to write a Silmarillion. Everybody's done that, so I'll just write a bunch of different books that sort of drop different pieces of lore in each book, and then the fans of the books can kind of like theory craft or kind of like draw parallels and connections and all that other stuff and involve themselves in the world outside of the actual books. That's kind of where I'm hoping I can go.
I think you're the first person who's ever said, I'm not going to write a Silmarillion. Everybody's already done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before.
Oh. Okay. Well, I mean everybody wants to write the Silmarillion, or
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I love Tolkien, but I don't know why anybody would want to read that, much less write it.
I loved that book. I couldn't get through the Lord of the Rings the first time I read it, but when I was a kid, I burned through the Silmarillion. But then again, I'm weird, so.
All those in favor? Yes, you are.
yes, I am.
Just the opposite way. I made myself read the Silmarillion, and I'm glad I did. But it was
time before. As a matter of fact, I got an illustrated edition. It came last week. Illustrated edition of the Silmarillion that has Tolkien's original illustrations in it, and it's like got the painted pages and all that other stuff, or nice. the painted exterior. So I just got that. The only Silmarillion I had was a paperback, and the original one, and that thing's just all tore up. So I'm a big. when I got into Tolkien, I was a big fan of Alan Lee, who's like one of the Tolkien artists. He was on the Lord of the Rings movies. He's one of the art directors on Lord of the Rings. Him and Alan, I think Alan Howe or John Howe, I think that was his name. And but I'm a big fan of Alan Lee's art, and most of the stuff, like I got the later Tolkien books, like The Fall of Gondolin and the Children of I think Children Haster. I've got those, and those are all Alan Lee illustrated, including I have a special Alan Lee illustrated Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. But Alan Lee never did the frickin' Silmarillion, so I had to, content myself with frickin' Tolkien, the author who didn't want anybody to do anything for his books. He had to do it.
Yeah. So, are you ready for a silly question, or Ro, do you have a serious one?
Well,
no, I don't know.
A serious one. No, go ahead, Mike.
Silly questions. What is this, Twitter?
Close. Number 2. If you could only use adjectives to describe either the sights or the sounds in your book, which one would you choose and why?
I really don't know, honestly. Half the time when I'm in my books, I use adjectives and adverbs, which you're not supposed to do, and Stephen King can go suck it. But
yeah, I don't agree with that.
But yeah, I'm always looking for something that's different than the other adjective I used. So I take a very what's the word? I wouldn't say nuanced, but a very neutral view of
so
that.
Do you have thesaurus.com open at all times when you're writing?
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
You can. There's only so many words for fire and flames.
Yeah.
Somewhere you get tongues in there, and that's about as far as you get. I mean,
have you entered any of these or tried to enter any of these contests?
No,
like Spitboard, nothing like that.
No, they're not going to pick my book. So
well, I mean, it's Spiffbo. If you win, you get Dumbledore's wand. So it's not about winning; it's about getting reviews and people out there. And
if there's a monetary reward, and I can I can hospitalize the other people who are going for it, then yeah, maybe we'll talk. But
you really need to join this then. You get the final one.
So, but no, and even with that, it's a popularity contest. I don't really care for an award. And the other thing is I know people who've won awards who are still not selling, they're not selling their stuff. So I'd rather spend my time selling my stuff and growing my audience than trying to chase awards or bestseller, whatever. Although this time around, the Revenant and the Tomb, the audiobook was the top new release in my genre for 2 days. But
but
I did it.
There you go.
In the indie market, 2 days is probably a long time for anything to be at the top of a pile.
Yeah, and if I hit a sale, and if I manage to hit the ads right, it'll shoot my book up into the top 100. I think the highest I got was like 20. So people are buying it, but
ads. That's the question. How are you promoting your book? I mean, are you using like Facebook ads, Amazon ads?
I've tried them all, and it's Facebook. And I can't get anything to work with Amazon and BookBub. I'm now trying Booksy. There's like free Booksy, and then there's bargain Booksy.
Yeah.
And so I got a Booksy ad running, I think sometime this month. But I primarily use BookBub and Facebook. But in Facebook, I get very good response, but I don't get any buyers. So it used to be I used to get a bunch of sales, but now nothing. I think it might be the economy. I'm not sure, or they just hate me. I mean,
Yeah.
So
50
were
50
talking-
at that point.
I
Go
think
ahead.
before we started, we were talking about. It could have been after we started. I don't even remember now.
It's a
talking about-
whirlwind of fun.
I know mailing lists, right? So
Yeah, I still have the same 20 emails that, you know.
so you've got an enormous mailing list, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Whole 30. So I got 101 I have 101 YouTube followers.
Nice.
Actually, I do. I don't know where the sales come from, but it comes from ads, and it comes from Amazon alerts when my books come out for people who bought my books, and they just don't send it from my email list. So it makes it devilishly difficult to try and tell them that stuff is out.
What's your YouTube about?
Oh, it's called HP Hunter, HP Hunters of the Lore Forge, and it's got a bunch of videos. It has a bunch of videos on it.
Really? On YouTube?
Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating, huh? No, I was doing kind of like the whining author thing, you know, why aren't you buying my books videos? But I also do a little bit of, you know, my perspective on writing, and now I've started another series called What About Aritas, and it's strictly for the readers only. So I'm going to kind of like split up my two lines, but I also have my book demos there. I used to have audiobook demos, and I'd have a free chapter that you could, you know, listen to. I didn't do that this time because I couldn't find anybody to read a chapter, and I'm not reading my own stuff. I already tried reading my own stuff. That's the reason why I got an audiobook narrator.
Yeah, it's almost bad enough writing it. I wouldn't want to have to read it as well, because then you just be like, oh no, that's no good. I got to change that.
It was funny. I had somebody say, "Yeah, but people really like it when the narrator narrates their audiobook." I'm like, no, they don't. So if you've listened to my audiobook, I have a really good audiobook narrator. So
That's always good.
it's Steve
What are you
Fortune.
talking about? Do you consider yourself a clean fantasy author? Is
Yeah,
that why you brought that up?
yeah. Except for the people getting heads cut off and stuff like that.
Yeah, you
Well,
know. but-
No sex, no sex, no swearing. There's like maybe one swear word in a book. So gotta keep it real.
I guess I'm a clean fantasy author. How about that?
Yeah.
Who knew? Shit.
Well, you know, I was just thinking before when we were talking about the contest that I'm adding Herman to my list of people along with Roe who I will not go on to wilderness walks with, because I know that I'll just be the one pushed down so the bear gets me first.
Especially if there's money involved.
I wouldn't push you.
Trip.
My trip. Yeah, I was supposed to say my trip. Look over there. Wonk.
Look, there's maple syrup.
Oh, that's not right.
Run, I hear there's a bear coming. Go that way.
You're supposed to charge them. That's the way. Yeah, EL, I've read your book. I love your book, but you are definitely not a clean fantasy author.
Which is surprising because I work with computers, so I've invented new swear words. So
Ooh.
What do you got in the die, Mike?
Let's see. See, we have some. Ooh, a 20, a natural 20.
Oh.
If your character,
due to me.
Yeah.
This guy, lucky guy.
Yeah.
Not
if
like
your
he's selling
characters
books.
competed in a reality TV show, what show would it be, and would they win?
Well, pretty much Survivor, and probably not because it's anything to do but survive. It has nothing to do with surviving.
Yeah, the
So-
social game. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, definitely not Big Brother.
There's a show on now where they've taken like people from all the other shows
Mm-hmm.
and thrown them together into like one giant piss take of a reality show,
Oh God.
right?
That sounds horrible.
See,
I
the
mean-
thing is, I haven't watched TV since I started writing. I haven't watched TV since I started writing. That was about 2.5 years ago. So
The only thing you've really missed is Ted Lasso.
I probably wouldn't miss it anyways. I mean, I do watch a few things every now and again when I come up for air. One of them was Stranger Things. I like that. I want to get that until Netflix brought out Cuties and I had to get rid of them. And they had another one on there called Kingdom, which was a zombie, like a Korean historical zombie apocalypse series. It was really good.
So, hot take for you, Herman. I actually like the Wheel of Time series, but then I've never read the books, so I could not compare to see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
can't.
kind of hated to say it when he mentioned that at the beginning, but I kind of like the Rings of Power as well.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, oh yeah, I like the Rings of Power, but
To be fair, I went in with it wanting to like it
yep,
and
me
willing
too.
to accept a lot of nonsense along the way.
Yeah, I can't. When you've when you've watched the movies, with the exception of The Hobbit and that stupid freaking dwarf elf
Oh,
romance.
don't get me started with
What
that.
I don't know what the hell
We
they were
don't.
thinking when they
No,
did
no, no,
that.
no.
Yeah, we need a romance. No, you don't need a
They were
romance.
thinking we're going to make a shit ton of money, is what they were thinking,
Yeah.
because they were not serving the
Yeah.
story in any useful form.
They were going to make a ton of money anyways. They didn't
Right.
need to throw that in there.
So
Peter Jackson can do, at this point, he could do a freaking film about a gum wrapper, and he's going to make money at it.
Yeah. And
So-
see. Yeah, Tim, we do have this conversation almost every chat, but to be fair, we didn't bring it up this time. So,
and
And-
EL is also a huge fan of Rings of Power.
Emily says ST4. What's ST4?
Star Trek 4?
See, that's where my head went, but that can't be it.
Maybe season 4? No, there's no season 4 in Rings of Power.
Maybe talking Voyager.
Fuck off, man. Stop it.
I did not like Voyager either. Of course, you know what? By that time, Star Trek had worn itself out after DS9, and it was just like I was kind of getting done with it.
Stranger Things is ST run.
I got the first one. Was the first two? First two were really good. I like Stranger Things, and I like going back to the 80s. So, the last good decade.
A question for you. I tell people all the time at work, I'm like, the 80s, I swear that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There's no way on earth it could be 40.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I'm a doddering old fool, which, might not be untrue.
Give
But
them a reason to doubt.
It's like, when you think back about it, in the 80s, in the 70s too, summer, you had all those blockbuster movies, and they were, most of them were good. Now you try and go find a movie to go to, and there's like nothing out. I mean, I've gone and see that Top Gun Maverick. That was pretty good. The other one that I saw, this is before COVID, was Knives Out, and I had to go to that because there was nothing else on, at least around that time. And then they came out with some Marvel stuff, and that wasn't bad, but it's like it's all superhero movies. There's not much else going on. So there used to be tons of stuff. There was Indiana Jones, there was Star Wars, and this.
The creative well in Hollywood is certainly totally dry, because I mean they're bringing out 30 or 40 years later another Beetlejuice film.
Yeah,
like come on, Beetlejuice was a fine movie and everything, but
you can only
long enough. Do we need it again?
You can only reboot Superman and Batman so many times.
Oh, well, they'll keep doing it, don't?
Yeah, well they've got to. They've got nothing else. So, and they tried doing Suicide Squad, which wasn't bad, but it didn't really resonate. The only good thing that we actually saw was maybe like Guardians of the Galaxy and that Marvel Phase 1. After Phase 1, it dropped off steep. So
I always tell people I stopped watching the Marvel movies after Iron Man was in Russia and had to build his own suit from scrap parts, whatever movie that was. That was the last one in the Marvel universe that I saw.
Yeah.
And
I actually kind of like that movie, but then again, it's kind of I didn't like it as much as the two others. And the Captain America ones, the second Captain America one, Winter Soldier, that was a phenomenal movie.
You got to stay in it, Mike, through Endgame.
no, I don't.
Yes, you do. Endgame is one of the. I think Endgame is one of the better movies. Period.
Yeah, it was
Not just Marvel movies. I think that was an excellent film.
I've also given up on Peter Jackson, and I will never watch anything he directs again if he ever directs anything again. I didn't watch The Hobbit because I knew better. When they said it's going to be 3 movies, I was like, no, not even going to watch it.
Yeah. Everly is not being entertained by this distraction down a rabbit hole of weirdness and asks a real question, trying to prompt us back on topic here. Everly, we are never on topic for any length of time. So, but it's a good question. So if you could adapt one of your books into a film, which would you pick? And who would star in it? I will add that to it.
Jeez. I don't know. If anything, I would do the books that I'm working at now, but the second runner up would be The Wizard's Stone. I only have 3 freaking books, so there's not much there to pull from. I like The Wizard's Stone. I really like The Wizard's Stone, the story and all the emotional nuance to it, but I got hammered by a couple of reviewers that were just like, they obviously didn't like the main character because boy, did they 2 stars. Guy gave me 4 stars on the last one, gave me 2 stars on The Wizard's Stone.
Oh, I read that.
Yeah.
I read that one. He at least gave you the courtesy of a lengthy review.
Yeah.
In some detail what exactly it was he did not like about it.
I just don't think he liked the main. He's also reviewing the next book too. This is the current book out. And then another reviewer, one reviewer, and he also called me the premier indie fantasy writer, and he loved that too. He called it the Hobbit for a new era, The Wizard's Stone.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think I found my marketing material.
Yes, you damn straight. I put that.
Wrap some full marks around that, and off we
I got
go.
a banner that's the first big freaking phrase on there. It's the first freaking book, and it's the biggest words on there. So, and now that this new one's out, I'm the premier fantasy writer. That's the next banner.
That's right. The Hobbit
Shill. Yeah, you know what my tag phrase is, don't you?
No.
Buy my book.
So you go to comic shows and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel your age when you go to a comic book show?
I feel horrendously normal sometimes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't really, outside of the fact that my body's falling apart, I never really felt my age. I still feel I'm freaking 20 years old driving around in my freaking Dodge Daytona or something like that. I don't feel like I've aged outside of my body falling apart. So
men are predisposed to stop aging at about 16.
Yeah. So I got 4 years on top of that. So
wow. You're mature.
Yeah, I'm really mature.
One of the late bloomers.
But yeah, I don't necessarily feel young. And as a matter of fact, I sort of fit in, I think, with a lot of the younger generation, because being in software and being around a lot of young people kind of keeps you in that loop, whereas you would normally be out of it. But there's parts like manga and anime. I don't get into any. I tried watching that. Yeah, I'm funnier than most young people. That's true.
Most young people are too quick to just say ridiculous shit to be fun.
Yeah. But like manga and anime, I don't get that. I tried watching that. The stories are just too way out there, and it's very much. Anime and manga is like, has that generation, has all those generations. My kid comes back and talks to me about it. And I don't I right over my head. I sit there and nod my head and say, yeah, yeah, cool. Huh? Yeah, cool. So, so that's kind of where the divide is. I'm into a lot of the music that they're into. Well, although not so much the new metal stuff, but I listen to a lot of heavy metal and a lot of newer bands. So I was a big 10-foot ninja band up until they broke up. So I'm still, I want to say, young at heart, and I still kind of identify with that. And I'm finding out, going to these conventions, that there are a lot of younger people looking for my types of books. I've had the last two conventions. I had a few people stop by who, when I was telling them about what my books were about, they were like, their eyes just got big, and they were like, I want this. One kid at Midland was like holding these books like they were freaking gold. Like he had the Holy Grail in his hand. His grandmother was there. I think she was buying him a present or something, and he wanted those books. So I'm getting an actually very good response from the younger generation with my writing. I used to think that, like with when I started doing the Wizard Stone and all this other stuff, before I actually started doing these live events, I used to think, well, this genre and this stuff that I like is dying. And because the only people I could get to buy it was freaking Facebook, and Facebook is, let's face it, it's for old people. The newer generation ain't there. They're on freaking Discord. They're on Gilded. I'm on Discord and Gilded, and but they're not on Facebook, and they're moving away from Twitter, and they're heading more towards TikTok and all that other stuff. But I'm finding that this stuff resonates with a much younger crowd, and that has me very excited. Because they live longer and they'll eventually spend money.
What is it do you think that draws them?
I think it's something new, and it's different. And maybe they were like me and they read The Lord of the Rings and they got through all the Conan short stories, and they couldn't find anything else that had that effect on them. They couldn't find the prose, and what they're being handed is freaking romantasy. Yeah. And that may work for the chicks, it don't work for the guys. And then that's why I think I'm seeing that crowd once they're starting to discover this stuff again. And let's face it, there's something engaging about the language that was used with guys like Howard and Tolkien and all those other authors, where it was sort of elevated, and it gave a feeling of like a sort of like an aura of the fantasy story. It added to it, not just described things. It added to the story, and I think that's what's drawing them. I mean, one kid basically pulled out a wad of money, a bunch of crumpled up dollar bills, and was like, here, how much would it cost? That was interesting.
So I had Nico from Nico's book review. When he read my book, he said, it's like a modern retelling of a 1980s story. and when he told me, I'm like, you're telling everyone my book is 40 years out of date. But I mean, I'm like, no. I mean, the 80s had some fun. I mean, Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, that sort of. And I'm like, you know what? He's not wrong. So if I'm mad, it's probably at myself.
And those books, those Dragonlance books, I keep hearing about that. I keep hearing contrasts or comparisons to that. Those Dragonlance books are still being read today by the younger generation.
Yeah.
These books have, these types of books, they have legacy. And that's kind of what I want, because I work in an industry where legacy is 5 years.
Mike, it surprises me that the part that caught my attention about what you just said seemed to go right over your bald little head. You said that they're telling you that it's like a retelling of a 1980s story. The 1980s wasn't long enough ago to have retellings, right?
I think it's only 20 years ago, but you know,
it is now.
Dante and Shakespeare.
Dude, you're 40. You're like old.
Ro, I had a person at work tell me that if it's pre-2000, it might as well be the Stone Age.
Okay. Love those Stone Age paintings. Go ahead, enjoy that stuff because it ain't getting any better. So
Nope.
So no, like I said, I was kind of discouraged before I started going to live events, but when I started having young kids come up and buy my books and them being really enthusiastic about it. I mean, the first one I sold was at was last year at a Comic-Con. It was actually put on by the same people who did the West Branch Comic-Con, but it was in Houghton Lake, and that kid was like about 11 years old, and I'm like, I don't know if this book is old enough for you, but he bought it, he liked it. He sat there and he read that thing right there. Of course, it's a novella, so he was pretty much done by the end of the event, but he was just absolutely engrossed with that book. So, and most likely he bought other books. I had another kid in Midland. Oh, when he was a kid, he's probably like 20, but
kid,
yeah. He I think he was he was at he had already bought one of my books, and he came back for the other book at Midland, which kind of shocked me. I think he might have bought it online because I don't remember selling it to him. But so they're there, and they're looking for something. You're always going to get those kids. Nobody wants to read all that stuff. Okay, whatever. But I'm finding that there's a lot of people who do want to read that stuff and like it. I mean, I was the same way. I was reading this stuff that was like done post 90s, and it's like, I don't like this stuff. People rave about Robin Hobb's the Assassin's Apprentice or something like that.
It cures insomnia.
Yeah, it's true. I was going to say, paint drying was more fun to read. And I don't get this. Oh, this is the future of fantasy. Really? I'm like, after I first bought the book, and I probably shouldn't be saying this because I make it a policy not to trash other authors' stuff. But I first bought the book, and it's one of those books that I read while I was traveling, and I got about 5 chapters in, and I'm like, I threw it away because it just didn't resonate with me. But somebody came in and said, "You really got to read this. You really got to read this. This book is great. This book is great. This series is great." So I got the audio book, and I think I got to chapter 10. I'm like, "What is the point of this book?" What is the point of this book? It was just this continuous telling of this guy's experiences, and it like didn't feel like it was building to anything, so I just gave up on it. And then recently we one of the group in the Iron Age, the guy's name is the Ultima Kahuna, and a few others, they were reading Fourth Wing because one of them got it like a Christmas present or a birthday present from a birthday present from like an aunt or something, and it said, "This is a really good fantasy book." So we all participated in reading it. I got the audio book, and I got to about chapter 5, and my head about exploded. It did. So I didn't get all the way through that. No, I am not. I can't understand how people can read that. I mean, I know the audience that it's geared to, and I'm sure the author knows her audience. I am definitely not that audience.
So I have to interject. So I have to tell this now, since Tim is here, because he gets on me for not knowing how to promote my books. Mm-hmm. But I actually had a guy at a Comic-Con. He came back next year, and he's like, "Oh my God, thank God you're here. Yours are the best books I've ever read. You are my favorite author." And without missing a beat, I said, "You really need to pick better books." Because this is how I promote my work. And I'm like, "Oh, can I reel that back in?"
Yeah.
Did I just? You're sitting there saying, "Did I just say that? Did I really just say that?" No. Yeah. No. I just say, buy my books, and it's become a joke, and it actually works. And the reason why I started saying that is because somebody said you should never say that, and I took that as a challenge.
That's right. You're Gen X, contrarian.
Damn straight.
Not say that. Challenge accepted.
So you say it's a challenge.
It is pretty pretty nice when people come up to you at those things though, and you've seen them before. They bought previous works and they're going to grab up whatever's new.
Yeah,
that's kind of makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, there's a point to all of this stuff that you're doing.
And then the next release comes along and obliterates that hope.
I also had a person come up and said, "Hey, I bought your book last year. I still haven't read it." And
Can
I'm
I
like,
get the next one?
"No." I'm like, well, they're wrapped now.
That was actually funny. I was there for that.
Still haven't read it. Oh, so do you want to buy my next one? See, that's an opportunity. That's just an opportunity. The next one, when you get done with the first one, the next one, you're going to really want to read it.
That's right. It'll be right there. It'll be right there.
Yeah.
So in the comments, people are talking about romantasy a little bit and how if it's done well, it's popcorn, right? It's just, and somebody here mentioned earlier in this program, Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a perfect example of a popcorn kind of piece, because I went into that movie expecting nothing, right? It's like, Top Gun was not great cinema. It was okay, but I like airplanes. And it delivered on that, right? The whole story of it was kind of stupid. Because that's why we have B-2 bombers and missiles to do things like that. You don't need to have an F-18 doing dumb shit like they were doing in that movie, but it looked cool.
Yeah.
Right? And if you were willing to kind of suspend all and say, I'm not here for the story, just pander to my eyeballs, it was fine.
Well, then the other thing too is it was well acted. It's pretty well written. And Tom Cruise does a fine job. I mean, he may have been a nutcase at some point where he's jumping up and down on Oprah's couch, but in later years, he's done some really fantastic work, like Edge of Tomorrow, Oblivion, a bunch of different movies that he's done. I thought was a fabulous job, and so he's really matured as an actor. And I think he takes the entertainment thing very seriously. He's not gonna. If you notice, a lot of the things that befall movies nowadays did not happen in Maverick, and it doesn't happen, I don't think, in those Mission Impossible movies. Although I don't watch them, it doesn't seem to me like he will put up with that. So I mean, he caters to the people. He caters to people who go to the movies not to be preached to, but to be entertained.
And from that respect, I think that's what a lot of the romance writers have figured out is that if they can produce a book every 6 weeks, they will sell that damn book, because the romance readers just want to know exactly what's going to happen in the next chapter before they get to it. They just want to see how it happens in this particular book, right? They're reading essentially the same book every time.
And sexy.
And they're okay with that, and they read them 2 or 3 a day.
Yes.
So, God bless them, I guess. Go make your bank. Go do it.
Yeah, and they're not watching Lifetime movies. That is.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't do that.
My daughter and I watch bad Christmas films all year round. We watched one last week. It was puke-inducing bad, but it's fun just to sit there and make fun of it, right? Now, when she goes off to college, will I continue watching them?
No. No. So, I mean, I do that with, we go up to my mother-in-law's house around Christmas. I'll sit there and I'll watch frickin' Hallmark Christmas movies because it's Christmas and they're innocent, and it's something you have on that's festive. You can only watch A Christmas Story so many times.
That is a good film, to be fair.
Yeah. Taps on all the things that all those kids have had every freaking Christmas.
And the funny thing is about A Christmas Story, that's only like a chapter of that book, right? So I mean, they took that one chapter and made a cult classic out of it, essentially.
Yep.
So. All right, John Stevenson, we're not putting that on the screen. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hallmark is my mom's 89 years old. We got her a Hallmark subscription for her Christmas or her birthday or something. Apologize to my father when we gave it to her, He's like, I just turned my hearing aids down. I can't hear it anyway. It's all the same to me. It's like, all right, cool. All right. Herman, is there anything you wanna leave with?
Buy my books.
I was hoping you'd say that. Put a picture. You got one? Can you show us the picture of him?
Yes, actually. This is. Let's see if we can do this without the glare. This is The Revenant and the Cult. This is my latest book. It came out the 21st of May. Roughly 55,000 words. The second one's going to be roughly the same size. It'll be coming out. I'm thinking about doing a Kickstarter this year and then doing a release, a full release next year. So that's the latest. The one that is associated with, or that's the one prior to it is The Revenant and the Tomb. This is novella. It's like it was almost not a novella. It's like 500 words short of a novel. And then this is The Wizard's Stone, the one that some people don't like and gave me 2 stars on, but is considered by one reviewer to be the Hobbit of this generation or this era or whatever. So all of them are available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you name it. I'm wide. I don't stick to Amazon exclusively. And they come in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And the audiobook's narrated by Steve Fortune, who is a fantastic audiobook narrator.
Nice.
How'd you team up with him?
So I got drunk one night at my favorite restaurant, and I'm telling my wife, we should put on an audiobook. So we should put on an audiobook. She goes, "You're right, we should." She wanted to do a graphic novel, and then I told her how much it would cost to do a graphic novel, and she's like, "Audiobook's better." And so I decided, okay, I did my research, and it came up with Findaway Voices. And at that time, Findaway Voices had a talent, like a talent directory. And what you had to do is you had to go and find a bunch of people when you're going to do an audiobook. You had to go find a bunch of people and have them submit an audition. So I got my audition ready, sent it out to 5 people. I couldn't find anybody who wanted to do fantasy. So, but I knew I wanted a Brit because there's just something about that voice. It's just like the cherry on top of the sundae. So I sent it out to a bunch of people, and one of them, the one who came back the quickest, was Steve Fortune. And I heard him speak, and I'm like, this is the guy. This is the guy I'm going to use. Yeah, but I had all these auditions out there, so I had to wait. My wife's going, well, if you know this is the guy, why don't you just select him and tell everybody else you picked him? I said, no. Got auditions out. I need to listen to them. But all the time I'm sitting there in the back of my head going, maybe I should do what she says. So
haven't you learned yet? Come on, man. You've been married long enough.
Well, I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. So I got back a couple other auditions, and they just were, it was not working. And so I contacted Steve. He did the book. And when I first heard the first chapter, I got freaking chills down my spine. Mm-hmm. He's a professional actor. He's in semi-retirement now. He still does acting. He still does acting gigs, but and he's beginning to get more work as an audiobook narrator. But and there's another guy out there called I think his name's Kenneth Cromwell. He also uses them for his books, and he's got this. He's got what it takes to be an audiobook narrator, and his voice is perfect for my writing. And so I've been using him ever since, and until one or both of us keel over, I'll probably continue to use him, or until he becomes famous and I can't afford him anymore.
So he prices himself out
Yeah,
of
it's
your.
crazy. But anyways, the story about my wife. My wife read that rewrite of the book I told you about. She said, this is as good as anything else, anything I've ever bought. Well, when I wrote The Revenant and the Tomb, I gave it to her to read, and she knew it was going to be a book that I was initially just going to give away, like I said, in exchange for an email address. And so she gets done with it, and she hands me back the book, and I said, so what do you think? Or handed back the manuscript and said, what do you think? And her first words were, so you're going to give this away? And I'm like, yeah. Why? She goes, maybe you should sell this. Like, well, I did say I would say I would give it away as a free giveaway. She goes, oh, okay. How about the one you're working on now, you give that one away and you sell this one? No, I already said I'm going to give this away. Well, that didn't work out, of course. So I sold it, and she called it. She didn't like the Wizard's Stone as much as the Revenant and the Tomb. But she liked that as well. And she's also called the Revenant and the Cult. She's like, this is good. And the next one, she said, it's even better. So thus far, she's batting 1,000 on her cause. She's my main beta reader. She's the one who reads it, tells me whether she thinks it's good, gives me her feedback and whatnot on it. So, and she's, like I said, she's a reader. She reads everything, and she, her favorite authors are people you actually pay to buy their books. So I can't say that she's been wrong. And she heard Steve Fortune's voice. She was like, "This is good. This will work. This will definitely work. This is the guy too." I agree. So
That's a great asset to have, especially in your house.
yes.
So,
I should have listened. I probably should have listened closer with the first time I gave her my book.
We all should.
Yeah. Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
Exactly. All right. So if you haven't already, go find Herman Hunter's books and buy his books.
Yes, and if you come to my events, actually, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to an event in Alpena, Michigan. When I sell my book, it's also a special event price, and you also get free bookmarks. So I'm also kind of in the comics community, and I try and do this right. And I have a bookmark for each book, and on that is not only a QR code for the artist, but it's also a QR code for the Amazon code. So I got this one. This is for the Revenant and the Tomb. This one is for the Revenant and the Cult. So, and that's a picture by Jason Argant. He's a great artist. He does this like black and white thing. It's like white on black. It's really, he does some really good stuff. And this is Eric Hawkins, and this is for the Wizard Stone. This is the spike that they pull out of a creature's head in the Wizard Stone, and this is Hal Cedric's sword. And Gary Shipman, he does a comic book called Titan the Mouse of Might. And if you've ever seen this guy draw, he's a freaking master. I kid you not.
Yeah. Great artists are worth their weight in gold, man.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
All right, Mike, you got anything to add?
Yes, I do. So, Herman,
Yes.
if we get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year, I am getting this tattoo.
Right.
So tell everyone you know and have them subscribe.
Oh, I will. Matter of fact, I'm going to clip that. I'm going to spread it all around.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being Gen X.
Thank you for being me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for being you.
Thank you for being Gen X and letting us all be bitter about everyone else.
Get off my
and
fucking lawn.
And
Damn
now we all
kids.
wave awkwardly while we wait for it to end.